Okay, good. Because I told you where it was.
Yeah, that's how everything was.
And that's why I'm thinking of the things I wanted to do. I turned out
whatever was daughter is son.
and that was it. And I told you what it was. I'm glad I did because he was over here. He was supposed to catch us.
I went there.
I'll tell you.
No, I'm not
Well, what they'll probably do is they'll actually
I'm going to
Anyway, my point is, I mean, I would. How many times are you stop?
I don't think anything else.
Yeah, that's a conspiracy.
My brother watched it crazy.
And I also wanted to
Some guy might pick up
Since we have the radio solutions, it's great.
All right, everybody, court order. We rise. Good. First off, the pledge of allegiance. Commissioner, do the honors.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Good to see you all out here today. Guess what we'll do is start with go around the table here, do some staff introductions. Start with you, Megan.
Hi, my name is Megan Staub, and I am the new curriculum manager for PCCD. Tracy Beaver, PCCD staff.
Wayne Hour, PCCD staff.
Rod Ruddick, Indiana County Commissioner.
Tom DeBovey, I'm Director of the Bureau of Training and Education for the State Police. Greg Westover, 25-year constable from beautiful Venango County.
Mark White, Allegheny County Constable.
John Bruno, 30-year constable, Dauphin County.
Sherry Leffler, PCCD staff.
Tom Berletti.
Shut Fountain, PCCD.
Beth Romero, PCCD staff.
Deborah Sanford, Chief Counsel, PCCD.
Good morning, Mike Pennington, Executive Director of PCCD.
Okay, welcome, sir. We have a new director, correct? Okay.
2 months.
2 months. Would you like to stand up and tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Sure, why not? Just for a couple of minutes. Good morning, everybody. Once again, I'm Mike Pennington, Executive Director. I was appointed September 16th. I'm not new to PCCD. I've been in the justice system for about 26 years, 17 of which has been here at PCCD. I was director of our Office of Juvenile Justice and our Office of Criminal Justice System Improvement here at PCCD. So we have a great team here. I've had a few meetings with John, a number of meetings, and you know, I look forward to getting to know all of you. I haven't been involved with this work specifically, but I'm trying to get caught up to speed. A lot of meetings with John and others, and you know, I really want to commend the board and the staff for all the work in dealing with a very difficult financial situation. I mean, and you guys have done a very commendable job, and I really look forward to working with all of you to, you know, to continue to provide quality training. So I'm excited about the opportunity. I'm honored, and I'm looking forward to working with all of you.
Welcome. Looking forward to working with you as well, sir. Thanks. Okay, let's move right along here to the action items. We have the unapproved draft minutes of August 8th, 2019 meeting. Has everybody had an opportunity to review those? Any corrections, comments? I have a motion.
Move to approve. I second it.
Approved. All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? Ayes have it. Before we go on any further, we had requested a legal opinion, I guess last time, regarding constables and working for the courts. Let me just ask the staff whether or not they had the opportunity to move forward on that.
We had discussed it with the council, and I defer to Deborah to comment on that.
I wasn't at the last board meeting, and one of the things that I did was try to determine what the actual question is and what the actual issue is. And if I have it wrong, we'll go back to the drawing board. But it seems to me that the underlying issue is about money and ways to stop the draining of the fund that goes into training. I think some of the questions came like, how can the board prevent someone who takes advantage of the free training or training that's offered at Commonwealth expense? How can the board prevent that person from then not paying back into the fund, from not working with in court appointments and court work? That's problematic. And if that's not quite the question that was asked, you know, correct me on that. And I think we talked about, or I kind of was looking at some of the examples of other people who had been in trouble with the law, broken the law. But it was not because they took advantage of the Commonwealth offered trainings and went to work in the private sector. It was because they specifically violated the law when they went to do those private sector jobs and represented themselves as constables while they were doing it. That's a clear violation of the law. You cannot, in your role as a constable, work in a private sector, doing private activities and represent, especially when you're approaching someone you're trying to control or whose behavior you're trying to change, and tell them that it's in the name of the Commonwealth or in your role as a constable. But you cannot say that someone cannot take advantage of the free training and then go work in the private sector. There is no legal support for that, and it would get into trouble to try to restrict people's behavior and job choices. So if this is in fact what you're thinking about, I would say a different kind of approach would be preferable, one where, like now, if you're looking at assessing or charging for taking basic training, looking at charging a fee so that everyone knows up front. I think some of the scheme that had been worked out had to do with you being charged a fee unless and until you go and work for the courts and put something back into the fund. That would be something that would be a little bit more in line with what the mandate is for the legislation and the training that this board is tasked with doing. But anything beyond that, such as controlling a person's behavior once they have had this training, because they have had this free training, would be problematic. So I don't know if that's getting you where the question you thought was leading, but in looking at this whole thing, that's what I thought would be the appropriate set of activities that would be more in line with the legislation.
Okay, Judge Black.
Building on your statement, I think you laid it out pretty well. What if you enacted a fee for everyone, and then could you return the fee if they do work for the court?
I think that's getting us closer.
Okay.
I'd like to see something like that put
I
down.
know it would create an extra
Absolutely.
bit of headache for you.
Right.
But at least, okay, look, everybody that's gonna go for training this year, it's X number of dollars.
Right.
And if you do a certain amount of work for the courts, at the end of the annual period, that money would be refunded to you. Or you can apply it to the next year's.
There's nothing in the legislation that says that that cannot be done.
Okay.
It's kind of silent on what this board, there's nothing that says this board is tasked with protecting the fund, enhancing the fund. But again, you are tasked with the training.
Right.
And if in fact it has to be shown somewhere down the line that it affects the training, the depletion of the fund, then of course any action you take that is reasonable and well laid out to protect the fund for the purpose of future training.
So you think
I
that
think
would
it's
be
right on
closer
the
to
money.
sass and mustard for that?
Absolutely.
Cleaner.
Yes.
Okay.
Just, I'm sort of the one that I think proposed the issue at our last meeting, and you very, very nicely, I think, summarized exactly what the issue was, and I think you laid out, I think, a pretty good direction that this board could take if they were prepared to do so. And in fact, I think that's really where the board is coming from. I don't think we want to do something that's illegal, but we do have a fiduciary responsibility to protect the integrity of the program. And I think this is something that we can maybe take under advisement to move forward. So, thank you.
Okay.
Any other comments?
I guess my question to the counselor is, part of your statement though was that our responsibility is to provide a training. So we would not have done anything fiscally to help the situation out, as was proposed by a number of constables that had contacted me over the past year, and we have just ran it over the cliff. I mean, financially, we'd have gone out of money and no longer could train. Were we? Do you think we erred in making a decision to be fiscally responsible, or we would have been better off just to run it off the rest?
I don't think it would be. I think that would be. I could argue it either way. On the one hand, one argument is, you're here, you're putting training together and doing everything you possibly can to keep moving the training forward, but it is not this board's responsibility to protect that fund, to do whatever invested in whatever we do with big lumps of money that go into the Commonwealth. I think you could argue it both ways, but I really don't think that there is anything in the legislation that requires this board to be, Wall Street or to, come up with schemes to invest money and make the money grow from a purely fiscal point of view. I think it wouldn't be the board's running it off the cliff. It would be the circumstances running it off the cliff. If everything that was done was reasonable and in line with the training protocols that have been in place forever, and it ran off the cliff, I think there would be a clear indication that you had done all that you could to comply with the legislation that you do and you provide training. There's just so much that the board can do. It's sort of, excuse me, someone else's responsibility to the money to actually protect.
And that would be my question, then who would be responsible? If not for us, if it's out of our purview, whose feet should be held to the fire? Because, right now we are in, some straits, and hopefully we get out of this.
The people in the rotunda, that's who should be held to the fire.
Well, do you see a mechanism going forward here that we can get this accomplished? You were very eloquent on how you talked about a fee up front and then some sort of a reimbursement if they work for the courts. But do you have a mechanism in mind that we can do this legally to get this thing moving forward?
Now you're sort of crossing from the legal into the fiscal,
right.
And that's sort of out of my wheelhouse.
And I would say, we would have to work with fiscal, because it really comes down to the mechanisms, the administrative process and how do we do that, and then go to, fiscal and, comptroller and office of budget, because money into the pot and then getting it back out. When we used to pay the stipend from 05 to 09, because constables were receiving more than one payment in a period of time, they had to have a vendor number. I don't know if you remember that, so everybody had to fill out a W-9, I think, and submit that, and then Department of General Services, I think, issued each constable a vendor ID number, because they were going to, every year they would be receiving a check. So from the Commonwealth's perspective, they viewed you kind of as a vendor, how they control payments out to somebody. So we'd have to go back and look at that whole administrative process, and has it changed, and how do we do that? And then, as appropriate, go to legal counsel and say, well, this is what we have. What do we do?
Well, to date, have we had any governmental agency or training board like us that has gone fiscally broke?
And again, the only precedent that I'm aware of, again, was the Deputy Sheriff Fund in 97, 98. Same kind of thing. That was because a county they were collecting the surcharge, but they were not paying it into the fund. So it quickly caused the same kind of situation. That board took all kinds of financial steps. They stopped reimbursements to the counties. They cut a lot of stuff on training. But then a political solution did come about. Legislation was then passed to increase the surcharge, but then that board had to pay back those reimbursements they upheld to the counties, and that took 2.5 years or so. And it took a little bit for once that new surcharge to kick in, because it was actually prorated. Like, I think it went up by $250, and then a year later it went up another 3 or something. Over like 3 or 4 years, the surcharge slowly increased, so that the fund didn't suddenly get a chunk of money. It slowly had to build up before that board could kind of improve training.
Well, do we know what the mechanism is? Looking at our financials going out in the future, it looks at some point we're going to drop below that threshold we talked about, where the comptroller no longer permits us to spend money. Is that correct? Is the comptroller shuts it down, or who shuts it down from spending?
So in Beth can jump in and correct me if I'm wrong. If we're going to go with new contracts to deliver training, and it's totals X amount of dollars, and the comptroller doesn't feel we have that money there, or because of revenues, because they'll look at revenue. We have to show commitments out so many years, length of the contract, but we really can't anticipate revenues, because as we know, revenues fluctuate, or they've been kind of going down a little bit, not a lot. So that's really a call to the comptroller. They may or may not, they may say, well, you can do a contract for a year at a time, based on the dollar amount. So, that all depends on where we are at that point in time, and how the comptroller views it. If they think, well, you can do it short-term increments, we may have to continue that way.
Is this typically, do we know, is this something that we have at least a little bit of lead time to prepare if they say you're no longer doing a contract beyond 6 months or a year or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, at a certain point, we have the existing contracts, and we have the contractors submit a new budget every year. That's one way we can, because, if a contract says for 3 years, they're only submitting a budget a year at a time. That allows us to review their budget and try and make sure they're, complying, and we're cutting things that aren't necessary, et cetera. But it also helps then fiscal and the comptroller take a look at that snapshot that, okay, 12 months out, you're still okay, et cetera. So, I mean, and those things we've implemented in the last 6-7 years, so.
Yeah, because I know we've talked a lot about it, but I really didn't know what the mechanism or what the steps that were taken to shut us down from spending.
Well, and I was talking with Beth, I took a look, and we'll get to the fiscal statement here, but just looking at that same one, I went back and looked at the same time period last year, and at that time, 2018, our total expenditures in the first quarter were $653,000, and right now our expenditures are about $200,000. So all those cuts that you've implemented for 2019 paid off. And at the time, last year, we had commitments going out about $3 million. Now we're a year further along, but our commitments now are only about 1.6. In November of 2018, staff had shown you guys predictions. If we cut these things, this is the savings we would get for 2019. We had come down to an estimate of it would save about $630,000 for 2019. We're tracking to save about $649,000. Now we've taken roughly $200,000 of that, and we're committing it to the online training, and we'll demonstrate what we have to show for that. But even still, that leaves about $450,000. That was a real savings for 2019. So going forward, we're definitely, revenues and expenditures are, slightly a little bit, but they're on par with each other. And as we've talked, the first fiscal report we got in this program in '95, revenues were 1.5, and now they're 1.6. There were some peak years where it was up around 1.7, but so revenues really have not changed at all in 25 years. So, but training costs have continued to increase, so.
And that's where the inflation, not having some sort of inflationary device in the legislation would have really been helpful, if we had that from 95 on forward, but I think that's where we got caught short, just the fact that inflation has ate up those.
Right, in fact, in that 95 report, fiscal report I looked at, we had, our expenditures for training was about 1.6 million. And so now we're talking, for 2019, I mean, these aren't final numbers because we don't have everything in. We're tracking to be about 1.5. But of course, for roughly the same amount of money, we're doing less training, but that has to do with the inflationary costs and various other things over 25 years. So.
Well, Council, at least I feel better. I know that if anybody, in the General Assembly says, have you done what you needed to do on your end, we can say with a clear conscience, yeah, we have.
Absolutely, I can show the results of it.
Thank you.
Major? Thank you, man.
Just a comment,
Yes, sir.
John, you spelled it out pretty well. I think when you were talking about the revenues and the expenditures are starting to jive, and we'll talk about this, I'm sure, in a few moments, that when you talk about, like in counties and working with budgets, when you look at anything, you look at the ending balance, what's your cash flow. And the frightening part about that, when you look at this budget, all the good things that we're doing, the ending balance is going to go from where it was in 2015 from 4.3 million to in 2023, which isn't too far off, it's going to go down to 868,000. That's a significant change in our culture financially. And you have done some good things going forward, and Sherry and the group here, in trying to balance this out as best we can. But we're reaching a point where we have to do something even more drastic than what we're doing right now, because unless we do, we're gonna hit that bottom number and then we're done.
Right, and the steps the board has taken, it bought us a little more time.
Yeah.
And, you know, we've really been looking at this, the first annual report where the board expressed its concern about the training fund was about 2007. But some of the things every year, you know, we never train 100% of the people that we project. We have to plan on, you know, training X amount of people, but for whatever reason, we don't always run as many classes as we had planned because, you know, guys retire, new guys, etc. So it's not like we're always training 100% every year. So that has bought, over the years, that has helped push it out a little bit at a time, but that window is getting smaller and smaller. So.
Anyway, thanks.
Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry.
Sir?
Hey, I think one of the things that we've overlooked, okay, we can't let this thing go belly up. We gotta keep it afloat. And the reason, anytime, every year, you have to apply for insurance, and your insurance carrier asks you how many training hours you have. I think if you write down 0 training hours, if this thing fell apart, you're not gonna be able to have insurance. Thus, as a constable, you can't do any work. So I think, you know, that's something we ought to keep in mind. The fact is, we could justify any increases due to the fact that it's your job.
And don't forget too, but, you know, with the Supreme Court, they said we got to be certified after the 2013 thing. So not only would it be the insurance was 0 hours, our certification is going to lapse. If we can't provide the training.
Exactly.
And then when our certification number is done, you know, expired, we're done. We're done.
Exactly what I'm trying to say. Thank you.
That's an excellent point. Thank you, sir. More than welcome. Appreciate it. Okay, thank you. Moving on. Financial report for November 7th.
All right. Fiscal report for the first quarter of the 1920 state fiscal year is on pages 8 to 12. Under receipts, the balance carried forward from the previous fiscal year was $1,792,024.50. The fees collected through the first quarter were $441,671.65. Under expenditures and commitments, the total cumulative expenditures as of September 30, 2019 were $203,008.49. Total cumulative expenditures and commitments as of September 30, 2019 were $1,896,669.32. That includes $263,237.25 in administrative expenditures and commitments. The breakdown of those costs is on page 10. The total of uncommitted funds as of September 30, 2019 is $280,384.33.
Any comments for Ms. Mayor? Questions from the board? Hearing none, shall move on to motion to approve. Excuse me. Motion to approve the. I make that motion. Second.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? Ayes have it. Moving forward, Sherry.
The next action item on the agenda for today is the Act 233 stipend payment for training year 2019. In the past, we had provided, as John just explained a little bit earlier, regarding travel training stipends for constables. The last time of which we made out a payment was in 2009 for the 2008 training year. And due to the recent training reductions and funding shortfalls, staff are recommending that no payments be made under Title 44, Section 7149, subsection F, to constables and deputy constables for training year 2019 until sufficient funds are available in the account to allocate for the stipend.
Okay.
And we would need a motion for that as well.
Okay, as presented by Sherry Leffler, do I have a motion to accept as presented?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Moving on. discussion items.
We'll ask Wayne to go over the instructor certification. We just have one coming before the board this meeting.
Yeah, there's only one, and it was submitted by Penn State. The gentleman's name is Matthew Brock. He's requesting to be certified in general law, communications, physical skills, and firearms. Currently, he is a supervisor with the Allegheny County Juvenile Probation Department. He currently has a master's degree in legal studies. He graduated from West Virginia University. He has 9 years of law enforcement experience, 4 years of instructional experience. His last instructional assignment was with the Allegheny County Juvenile Probation, both as a firearms instructor and a regular instructor. You can look at and see his certifications with the NRA, PPCT, OCAT, and expandable baton. The staff recommends certification for Matthew Brock for the topics listed above.
Any questions from the board? Comments? I'll make that motion. Certify Matt Roth as an instructor. Do I have a second?
You got it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Moving on. Revised 2020 board meeting schedule. Sherry?
We had some conflicts with the meeting schedules for 2020. So I was asked to move our meetings back a week. So we are going to ask the board to reapprove the 2020 meeting schedules. The meetings that were affected were the May meeting and the November meeting. Basically, we're moving the May meeting a week forward or back, and then the November meeting we're moving a week forward. So we're going to May 7th and November 19th.
Does that still keep the commission meetings right after ours?
Yes, it will, yes.
Okay. Any comments, discussions on the change? Do I have a motion? Accept the revised schedule?
I'll make the motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Major? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Moving on. Discussion items. We have none. Moving forward. Informal items, 2020 curriculum and online training update.
Yeah, I'd like to introduce Megan Saab. As she said, she's the new curriculum manager, replaced Deb Williams. She comes to us, she's got about 15 years of online experience. She's taught at the college level, criminal justice. So she's really just learning how we do things, but she's very familiar with a lot of the topics. And the key thing is her experience in online training, not just how to conduct it, but also to the actual platform we're using, which is Canvas. And I think the state police went to Canvas a year or two ago for your online training. So but we're going to ask Megan to show you a little bit of the training module. Keep in mind, this isn't the 100% fix, so there's still a few things we have to clean up, but you'll get a good gist of what the constables will experience when they go through the online training. And then after Megan's done, I'll explain a little bit more about how they're going to get online and that kind of thing. So
This is a prototype.
this is actually the almost 90% solution module. So she'll just show you a little snippet of how it looks and how it works. So
Does anybody leave the lights dim, or can they say ours?
Okay, if I can turn your attention to the screen over here, or there, whichever is more comfortable for you. This is going to be the sign-in page that all students land on. Every student will be assigned a username and a password. Just enter it and click login, which takes you into Canvas. Or it does not. Give me another second, please. We have actually, I experienced some Canvas issues this morning. So if you can just be patient with me for a second, please.
Sherry's going to get a lot of phone calls.
Don't say that, Dan. You're jinxing us.
And also, too, keep in mind, because this is in a working environment, initially, as Megan clicks in, you might see some things. She'll go to a student view, so you'll see what the actual student will see.
Okay, so just to start off, right here, we have, this is the dashboard. And the dashboard is where all your classes are listed, and each class is going to be a tile such as this. You click on each individual class and you'll enter the classroom. Let me get to student view here. All right, where is
And you'll see that we're also, the deputy sheriff program is also going there. The deputy sheriff is also going to online training. We're doing this simultaneously. They will be separate, what they see, but we have all the courses in here for staff to look at and review in one spot. So they're not going to see deputy sheriff training.
Okay, so we're in student view, and what you see is what all the users are going to see. And this is your home page. So your home page is going to have the course title, a very short menu here about starting on the syllabus and the tutorial. Below that, you're going to have your tutorial, all your course modules. All your course modules hold all course content, a student course evaluation, and a student test. If you scroll down further on the homepage, you also see there are options for troubleshooting, which again, this is beta. These are not final, but they will be by the time we're ready. But anybody who encounters a technological issue or what have you, they always have this information down at the bottom of the page where they can reach out. Okay, so let's start with the syllabus. You just simply click on the link, and it's going to take you into the syllabus. This is the same syllabus that PCCD has been, or I should say syllabus format, that PCCD has been using all along. It's just in electronic format here. Currently, I mean, you have your course expectations, your course guidelines. This is not finalized, but there will be an active link where they can click on the link. It will reroute you to another page to read the student code of conduct. Course requirements for passing and failing the class. And then there's an outline of all the modules and learning objectives in the course. And then there's also instructional information about the test, explaining the process that they get 2 attempts, you must pass at least 1. There's information on technical requirements, hardware and software that must be used in order to access Canvas and to complete the training. Common FAQs, and again, that same help information that I showed you on the homepage is also on the syllabus, so there's multiple places to find that information. So that's your syllabus. Okay, after the syllabus, we're going to go back to the homepage. The first thing that everybody is going to have to do is the tutorial, which is the link before any module. This is required. Everything is locked down, and I'm going to explain that in further detail. You have to start with the tutorial, which is very, very user-friendly. It's going to walk you through how to navigate Canvas and how to navigate the course. What I mean when I say everything is locked down, meaning the tutorial. If you don't do the tutorial first, you cannot access module number 1. Okay, once you are in module number 1 and you go into the slide presentation, you cannot get to the next. You can't skip to the next slide until the first slide is complete, and so on. Every module must be completed. Every required resource in the module must be completed before you can move on to the next module. This keeps users from the ability to just skip all of the content and jump to the test and take it right away. And it ensures that they are exposed to all content.
The tutorial we're only going to make mandatory the first year.
Correct.
After that, it'll just be a help tool, somebody needs. But we figure the first year, we want to make sure everybody goes through the tutorial.
I will be timed.
The test?
Can't accelerate. Okay, I understand and I agree with not being able to skip right to the test.
Right.
But will the modules be timed so they have to spend so much time,
Yes.
whether they're looking at it or not?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, she'll show you.
Yep.
You just can't.
Because there's a lot, there's voiceover narration. I'll show you in a minute. And
Okay.
yes, they can't. It's going to take a chunk of time.
Okay.
Can't just fly through. Okay, so the course is locked down. Like I said, everything has to be taken in order, and every module must be completed. Once all modules are completed, if you scroll down, you'll see a course evaluation. They must take the course evaluation and provide feedback. The course evaluation consists of 10 multiple choice questions and 2 open-ended questions where you can provide feedback, which PCCD will use to nip and tuck in the future. But you must do it. If you don't complete the course evaluation, you cannot unlock the test. If you cannot unlock the test, you cannot complete the training. Okay? So they must do everything in order and to completion. Upon completing the course evaluation, you move on to the test. do you want me to go over the 2 attempts? Are they aware of this?
Yeah, it's the same standards as in the classroom. You know, it's 2 attempts. You know, if you fail the first attempt, it'll tell you your grade right away, and there'll be a spot where you can click to take your second attempt. I think in several places it recommends you kind of block out 30 minutes. And I went through, this was a while ago, I went through this course and I read everything and did it, you know, to time. And it was about 3.5 hours. I mean, so, you know, and the other thing too is you'll be able to do this in chunks. You don't have to sit down all at once. So if you just do module 1, you can log out and come back a week later and pick up at module 2.
It will save your progress.
It'll save your progress. So you can do this, you know, 30 minutes at a shot or whatever. So
I'm sorry, go ahead.
At the end of the test, and you get your score back and you pass, is there going to be a provision to print off the certificate?
No, what's going to happen is, and I'll get into this after Megan's presentation,
Okay.
that data is going to come from the LMS into sets, okay? And so your record, you know, your grades will populate just as if you went to a classroom over the weekend and, you know, Monday, Tuesday, the school would submit the grades in our system. We're going to integrate these systems, so when you complete it online, it'll send your grades and your information into sets and it'll show up in your training record.
Okay. And the only reason I question that is just in case you're somehow some technical malfunction happened. I like being able to print off the certificate. Only
Right.
because it shows I completed it and I passed it.
And I'll get into a little more detail after our presentation on some of that.
All right.
Can we ask you a question, John?
But, well, let's let Megan get through and then.
Oh, and can I just chime in on his concern? I mean, one thing that is an option when you complete the test is it will give you your score. We can't print out a certificate, but if you so desire, you could always take a screenshot and print a screenshot.
Okay.
So that's an option.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you fail the test, you have the ability to go back then and.
You do.
do the
And review
modules.
materials?
Yes.
Yes, you do.
Yeah.
Yes.
Once you complete a module, so if you get all the way to module 4, you can go back to any of the previous modules at any time and review material, etc.
Yeah, once they're unlocked, you can move back and forth as you desire. Go ahead.
Say, for instance, you go through the modules and you say module 5,
Mhm.
You fail. Does it tell you what module you actually
You can't fail the module.
You can't fail
You can't
Okay.
put, the modules are just full of your information for
Okay.
learning. The test is the only graded element, and that can only be taken once you move through everything.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Let me find my slide. I'm sorry. Okay, so let's take a look at the module. So I'm going to go into module 4 because it has everything specifically, all the options that you're going to see. When you click on the module, you're going to see the main presentation, which I'm going to open here shortly. You're going to see bonus resources. However, let me scroll up. This is module 3. They have required resources. There simply isn't required resources in module 4. But where there are required resources, the user must open these documents and access them, or they cannot move on to the next module. The bonus resources are not required. It's there for your information. It's valuable. We encourage its use. But if you don't open it, it's not going to keep the next module locked. But the required resources will. So when we go into a module, we click on the link for the presentation. It's going to take you to this page asking you to load. You click on this link, and the presentation is going to load. This is what you're going to see. Okay, I'll restart this.
Module 4, the Plain View Doctrine.
Okay, I apologize. This is as loud as the audio gets, so you know, do your best to hear what it says. So here's your opening slide. Okay, once the narration stops, you go down to the next button. You click on
Module
next.
objectives. Upon the completion
There's
of this module,
voiceover. There's
constables
content,
will be able to
and look what I do right
discuss
now when
the
I try to
Plain
click
View
next.
Doctrine as it applies to
Nothing
constables and
happens.
understand what
you cannot advance
constitutes
me on the
plain
slide
view.
because it's not done yet. This
Understand
button
the
will not
Medical
activate
Marijuana Act as
until
it
the
applies
narration
to
is done.
constables and how it may apply to the Plain View Doctrine.
So now it's completed. I can click the next button.
The Plain View Doctrine, simply put,
just gonna let
states
this
that
run through,
items
and then
that
I'm
are
gonna show you,
immediately
a
recognizable
quick
as
technique.
contraband or evidence may be seized by an officer without a warrant, and will not violate the Fourth Amendment rights of a subject.
Okay, so something that is a really nice user feature is these 3 lines are an icon in your upper left-hand corner. You can go ahead and click on this, and what you're going to see is a menu of each individual slide that's in the presentation. Only the slides that you have viewed are accessible if you want to go back. So you can't click on this and say, I want to just jump and skip slides. If I do that, it's not letting me move. You can't do that until you view them. They are also locked down. But for the slides that we've already seen, let's say I missed some
The
information or I
Plainview
want to
Doctrine,
review the information.
simply put,
you just click on the
states that
slide
items
rather
that
than
are
having to go
immediately
back through
recognizable
23
as
slides to
contraband
find the
evidence
slide you want.
may be
You
seized
just
by
click
an
on the
officer
slide
without a
that
warrant
you have
and will not
information on, and it
violate the
takes you back
Fourth
there.
Amendment rights of
Okay.
a
So
subject.
this is a navigation option. And if you don't like this menu being here, you just simply click the 3-lined icon and it goes away. Okay.
Click on each of
This
the
is an
notes to
example
review
of
the
an
case of
interactive
Horton
slide.
versus California.
So we're going to have the narration. Once the narration completes, the individual user has to click on
The
the
Plainview
icon.
Doctrine arose out of
More
cases such
information
as
is going
Horton
to
versus
present.
California, wherein an officer had probable cause to believe that the proceeds of a robbery, as well as weapons, were located at the home of the suspect. The officer obtained a search warrant that specified that the search was only for the proceeds of the robbery, and did not give the officer the legal authority to search for weapons at the residence.
Okay, once the narration on the interactive slide is over, it shows you a little icon of a house. This is meaning it's going to take you to the original slide. It is not going to take you to the home page, but it takes you back to the slide because you still have 3 more interactions that you have to do. Notice I haven't done 2, 3, and 4, and if I try to advance, I can't. I have to work through each one. So that's how the interactive slides work. When you're done, I'm going to go back to the home page here. Okay, go to my home page. When they move through all of the modules, we're going to click on the evaluation. Like I said, it's 10 questions, and there's 2 open-ended questions. They have to complete it. Again, just a reminder, all the way at the bottom, we have our troubleshooting options. And then when you want to leave the, let's say you want to break up your training or you did all of it and you're done, you just click on account, log out, and you're done.
Does anybody have any initial questions? I'll kind of talk a little bit about how guys are going to get registered and all that. I mean, is anything from Megan or
Any board members, questions?
okay? One of the things.
Should we throw it out to the?
Sure.
Very quick. When you take the test, will it tell you what questions you missed, or do you have to just assume, so if a person fails,
Yeah.
how will they know?
Which questions they missed?
Correct.
I don't believe you can get access to that.
Right.
It'll
And we've
give you
gone
your
back and forth.
score.
Part of the problem is, and again, this first year, we're trying to get this up and launched. One of the issues, because Canvas does have that tool, so if I take 10 questions and then it grades it and says, oh, you missed questions 5 and 7, and can provide an answer, that means we have to have a much larger pool of test questions. And it's been a time crunch issue. So, we want to have you take multiple tests. We want to make sure we're not giving you the same 10 questions again and just reshuffle. You can still ask the same information or test the same information, but you want to have different questions. And we're in a time crunch on a lot of this right now. So going forward in future years, that's probably a tool we will enable. And again, this isn't going to be perfect this first year. In fact, what I was going to cover now is kind of about the enrollment and all that kind of stuff.
The only reason I say that because I can see somebody getting nervous about the whole thing and going back and getting answers that they may have had correct.
Right.
Now answering those incorrectly. You know what I mean?
Right.
Going about the same circle.
And so we'll put in, we have probably 2 more bulletins or maybe even 3 that we're going to get out before the end of the year. And we're going to break a lot of this down for people. And of course, the training schedule that we put online, we're going to have information in there. We can put in some suggested, best practices for online. I mean, that's where Megan's experience. I mean, she's had plenty of online students and online courses. She's been great in giving us some interesting way to do things because of that. How's the learner do it, and how what's the most common mistakes by online learning. So we're not there 100% yet, but yes, we're aware of those kinds of things.
Okay.
So
Please stand up when you name who you are.
I understand it's probably not going to be possible now, but will there ever be any mechanism down the road in the future? Do you think that there'd be able to be like a group training, like constables could get together at a county association or something and sit down together and do one login and then have one person, maybe even have like a PCCD instructor there, like some constables are PCCD instructors to run it?
at this point, I would say no. I mean, the cost. One of the reasons we went to online training was to eliminate that instructor cost.
Oh, I didn't mean like to have PCC pay for the instructor. I was more along the lines of saying
Guidance,
what?
guidance.
Guidance, whatever you want to call it. I'm thinking more along the lines of like, say, like a certain organization puts on like a weekend training value session, and in that weekend training session, a 4-hour block or a 5-hour block is dedicated to this, and that way it would allow any constables out there that maybe aren't comfortable. I hate to say that word, but maybe not comfortable with something like this to come to something that wouldn't cost PCCD any money, but would allow that to be done in a group environment.
You know, again, what associations do, like, you know, but also too, we talked about this, I think Anton brought that up a meeting or two ago.
Yeah.
Couple of things, you know, individuals still responsible, you know, to take their tests on theirs. I mean, and so this is for the individual to complete their training when they want, et cetera. And I understand that there's a lot of the training population staff's heard from who, you know, say, hey, I don't use a computer, or I've never done online training. There's going to be that transition period. It's, you know, for some people, this may be the thing that they say, hey, I'm done, or whatever. But we're heading in this direction, and, you know, technology's not going away either. I mean, you know, we've talked, you know, when AOPC first started putting out the public docket sheets, you know, we really pushed that in training bullets and said, hey, here's a tool for you to, you know, see, you know, people you're looking for and that kind of stuff. So, and I know a lot of constables use that on a regular basis. So it's a matter of kind of adapting and move on. So, but I want to talk a little bit originally, the individual.
John, if I can just address that last, the constables. I think you have something like S2. Now we're starting to look at the possibility of, I'm not suggesting anything, the integrity of the process. We got a group of constables, and this can't turn into a group like, okay, Charlie, what's the answer to this one?
And honestly, if you did do that, and I'm sitting there with Tom and we're doing it, and Tom says, oh yeah, that's C, and I end up failing, you know, again, I think this is, it's just like anything else. You know, the board updated its code of conduct to reflect, you know, online training. You know, there's still that academic integrity issue. You know, you have to protect your username, password. You know, you have to do it on your own, etc. So, I mean, we can't validate exactly who's sitting behind that keyboard, but you know.
I want to follow up on that. That's interesting. My granddaughter was going through an online course for an MBA at IUP, and I thought, these online courses, I mean, you could do that. You could bring someone in, sit down beside you, but it was so tight that she had to have her eyes focused on the screen, and once her eyes moved off the screen, it would shut down. So there was no ability to have that kind of engagement I think you're describing. I don't know,
and just generally with online learning, the way we discourage that sort of group participation in one person's assignment is time limits. So your test has a time limit, and if you have gone through the material but you've just given it a really quick skim and you haven't really spent any time studying or preparing, you may, if you're a quick learner or you're very, you know, visual or whatever, you might slide right through it. But if you're like most of the world and you need to study and you didn't study, you're going to run out of time. And so if there's a couple of people and you got to talk this over, and what do you think, and what I think, I think this is C, you think it's B, no, you're wrong, you're going to run out of time. That is one way we control that.
by time.
Yeah.
Is there a system that keeps the person on screen all the time?
You mean, do you mean as in it'll boot you off, it'll kick you off?
Yeah.
If you're, it's just like any other computer, if you're not active for an extended period of time and it's just sitting there, it's going to log you out. And if you're in the module, it's not a big deal. You can always go back into the modules. If you're in the test, that's going to be one of your 2 attempts.
And I can speak to this. My daughter at a university, I went to pick her up and come in, and she and her roommate are taking a final. They're in the same course. And they're sitting side by side. I said, "How are you guys not cheating?" Well, the tests were completely different. So every time somebody logs in, it randomly generated, and it wasn't just I reshuffled the same questions. They were all different questions, and they were being scored. They only had so much time per question, and if they didn't answer the questions within a certain period of time, it locked them out, and that was a failure. So there are tools out there, and I guess that's where I'm going to, Dan, also, is that, you know, over time there's technology, because universities are going to counter this, and so eventually constables have to get used to, I need to do my online training. And I wouldn't want to encourage something different, you know, so.
Any more questions? Ladies and gentlemen, when you address the board, please stand, state your name and where you're a constable from. So.
Jack Garner, I'm not a constable, Dauphin County. The question is on bonus material.
Mm-hmm.
Do you need to complete each and every one of those bonuses before the next comes up, or is it only the required?
Only the required.
And are any of the test questions from any of the bonus materials, are they from all the previous?
It should only be from modules and required content.
Okay, so in other words, people can skip over those bonuses
If they so desire. We
Is there a
encourage
way
you
to,
not.
is there a way to print out or link any of those case laws?
They all come up as
yeah,
PDFs.
they're all PDFs,
I mean,
so you can print them. All the required and bonus materials are in PDF, so you can print them out.
Okay.
Print out hard copies.
And is that on the 3 bars in the top there where there's a print function or something?
Do you mean, I'm not sure what you mean, the 3 bars.
Well, if you want to print out the stuff to study it before the test, you print out.
Okay, so if you want to print out the required resources or the bonus resources, you open a PDF. Within the PDF, there's going to be an icon of a printer that you click on to print that document.
So as you go through each module, you'll have access to whether it's the required or the bonus materials. You can print it all out. And like I said, you can do these in small increments before you take the test. I mean, you could take 2 months to go through this module before you take the test. It's really up, the pace at which you do it is up to the learner.
But if you print it out, then you could have something in front of you to look at to refresh your memory before you take the test.
Yes.
Yes, but what I would also caution, especially for a new user group, because I've had a lot of students always assume, well, you know, I got all the materials right in front of me. If you don't know them, 30 minutes is not enough time to find it.
To page through.
Yeah, to page through, find the answers, and get the test complete.
I just want to touch base on kind of the more practical side. So originally, we were going to have constables go through the registration process. We're not going to. The main reason is the Commonwealth has a login system. If you access any Commonwealth system, for example, PCCD has the e-grant system that counties and state agencies and everybody applies for grants. There's all different systems. They had a PA login, and you'd go there and create a common username and password that will allow you to access different Commonwealth systems. In fact, that's what constables use to access CETS, or the sheriffs to access that system. The Commonwealth has been looking to upgrade that system, that login system, and they've been talking about it for 1.5 years, and now it's come to fruition. And it has caused us to back up some things we were going to do with this integration of the LMS and CETS. So what we're going to do is we're working with Temple. We're going to mass enroll everybody behind the scenes, and then Temple will create the user accounts. And this is why a constable has to have a valid email in their CETS profile. Because the first thing you'll do is you'll get an email from Temple's Canvas system saying, your account's been created, follow these instructions to activate it, to get it started. And so that'll save one big step for constables, okay? And we'll publish that when we do that. So, we'll be saying, hey, as of this date, you should be getting an email from Temple saying your account's been created, you have to go activate it. And then once you activate it, you'll have your username and your password, and then there's a unique identifier that their system issues, and you need to document that. That and your username we're going to capture and put in the CETS profile. So if a constable loses that unique identifier, they can go into CETS and still see it and find it. That'll help reduce some of the help desk issues. So, but the Keystone login has to keep moving. In fact, our developers had to work on CETS and the deputy sheriff system to get it ready for that changeover. So he hasn't really had a chance to make some of the changes in CETS for this online. So really over the next 2 months is going to be a crunch time for us to adapt and get it integrated. So, but kind of as I was saying to you, Constable Westover earlier, so when somebody goes in, they do their training, Temple will capture that grade, etc., or the attempts, if they take it twice and fail, that data will come back into CETS and that information will be there. Constables will still register for the 8-hour classroom as normal. You know, you'll go into the schedule and pick your location, register, etc. So, but eventually that online registration will be built in. So when you register for your classroom, it automatically enrolls you to the whatever online training is required for that year. So,
John, if I can just elaborate a little bit more on the Keystone login. All the current users that we have within the SET system, you will have to go and re-register with the Keystone login. Even though you previously had the PA login, you will have to go through and re-register with the Keystone login. So I will have a bulletin that will be devoted just to Keystone login. But like John said, we wanted to eliminate that second registration through Temple's Canvas. So that's why we're doing that hybrid approach and actually having Temple enroll everyone in the Canvas system, so we didn't have any confusion between Keystone login and Destiny 1 registration, just to make it a little bit cleaner for our end. And then with the Temple user ID and username, that will be in the SET's profile. So if you have any questions about that, staff will be able to see that information in the system. But if you're having other issues, we're going to try to define for you when to call PCCD, when to call Temple regarding the Canvas system. So we'll try for the help desk. We will try to come up with as many issues and hypotheticals as we can, and we'll publish that as well. So if it's something that is dealing with training and certification, you're going to call PCCD. If it's an issue with your Temple ID and password are not working correctly, then that would go to the Temple help desk. So we'll try to be as clear and concise as we can on that information then.
And you know, I would just emphasize, as I said before, it's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be, there's going to be room for improvement. You know, this is our first step into online training. So I would ask the population to be patient. And there's only room for improvement. You know, going forward, this allows us, once this platform's established, to add, if the board wants to add additional training online. I know we had talked down the road, a prerequisite for basic or firearms, take the firearms, you know, safety issues and training. They'll let them test online. That way, when they go to qualify, that's all taken care of. So this is going to be a good base for us to build on.
But the bottom line, John, is on any, if a constable gets hung up somewhere through this process, trying to do a test or class or whatever, you're going to have a help desk of some sort to talk to, right? I mean,
right.
You're going to be able to call and say, hey, this just isn't working. I mean, I first got exposed to this as an EMT, doing my content for EMT. And it has some gremlins along the way, you know, to work through it. I tried my 5-year-old grandson first. He usually could knock it out for me, but if I got hung up. But that didn't work. You know, we didn't have a process with we could get a hold.
And that's what Sherry, we actually just had a meeting one day last week where we actually walked through trying to anticipate and again, Megan's input, because she's been through this on the other side. What's the most common things users encounter? What are the problems? We know there's going to be certain issues, you know, Temple using Canvas, they know from their student population what are the most common kind of help desk issues. So as Sherry said, we're going to have probably 2, maybe even 3 bulletins. We're going to have this information on our webpage. It's going to be in the training schedule. We're going to publish, you know, screenshots, all that kind of stuff. We're going to try and give as much information as we can.
And speaking off of Dan Hall, I think what the associations ought to do is whoever their people are that do training for the association, whatever, I think they ought to go through it and do that process, and then they see specific issues, fix it, and then at an association meeting say, hey, we are going through the online, and here's where you're going to have, you may get hung up on. So this is what we found out. And I think that's the approach from the association, helping especially your older members that aren't really tech savvy to get through this. I think that's where the associations ought to look at, get a couple of their people right off the get-go, go through the process. Alex, you're a younger guy, you understand computers a heck of a lot better than I do because I've worked with you. But you have that then you can say, all right guys, I went through this and this is where I got hung up. So here's how you fix this and how you fix that. So I think it'll work.
And we're also going to make the tutorial available on the PCC webpage. So even before they get into Canvas, even before they log in to do the training, they can even go through the tutorial. It's a video clip.
Good.
So at least that shows them some familiarity, so when they do log in the first time, they've seen some of it before, they can look at that tutorial even before they get it. So,
good.
It'll work.
John, it's just the first of 2 online trainings, is that right? We're doing 2 next year?
We had talked about in 2021 adding a second online course, yes. Yes. And that's what I mean, you know, the biggest lift is doing this integration piece so that the data's automatically come in. And once we have that established, that's, you know, building curriculum into a Canvas platform and dropping it out there. That's the easy part. It really is.
And this will be online and accessible in January?
Right.
And you have the entire year?
Right. Well, we're going to go to right now 1 December, or well, maybe December 4th, because the first is on a Tuesday. We don't want to cut it off. We want to, so if guys have problems, you know, that last weekend, we want to make sure we can get them resolved. But because we need some time to go through and validate stuff, so if there are any issues, if we've seen any problems through the year, we make sure we have all the correct data, because then we have to go through certify, create ID cards, and that process. So, you know, once we go through it once, we may stretch that out a little bit, but we wanted to have December to do everything we need to make sure people are certified for the next year.
What about the 170 or so constables that do not participate in SETs?
Well, right now what that is they are either not a SETS user or they don't have a valid email address in the system. So we have already sent them letters, and Tracy's been working with that, they respond back, if they give us an email address, then we're updating them. Or if they are not a SETS user, we're basically telling them, you are going to have to become a SETS user in order to access the 4-hour module for online for next year for your certification.
So we're going to have to buy computers.
Yes. Or go to the county library. We're gonna publish that with local resources. We've talked to quite a few already, and we've suggested, you know, maybe hook up with another constable who does have a computer, maybe sit with them, go through the online with someone sitting over their shoulder, even, you know, a child, you know, or a grandchild, as, you know, Craig said, to assist them to get through this process, but they will have to go through the online training for certification for next year.
Okay. Any more questions from the board? Okay, moving on. Where are we here? 4-hour annual firearms qualification update.
Okay, so we are finished with all the training classes for this year, both Con Ed and the annual qualification courses. And I just wanted to give the board an update on where we were, or where we are now as far as the failures for the firearms and some statistics around that. We held 53 annual qualification classes this year, with a total of 863 that completed the training and passed the annual qualification. We had a total of 81 failures, 13 of which were double failures. So that means they came, they took the training class, they failed, they paid, they came back, they took a second class, and they failed the second class. So there was 13 double failures. So the overall failure rate was about 9%, which is less than what was being predicted when we were talking about this last year at this time. We had 3 that failed on phase 1 on 2 attempts. We had 75 that failed on phase 2 on 2 attempts, and we had 3 that failed on the written test after 2 attempts. We did have quite a few no-shows. We had some malfunctions. There was 2 fire and safety issues that were documented for this year as well. As far as the failures by region, we had 40 failures in the west, 21 in the central region, and 20 in the east. And I do have copies of these statistics if the board would like copies of those to review as well.
And the staff have been out, and I can speak for myself, monitoring some of these annual qualifications. And I think it really came down to, and if we look at when these failures occurred, as the year went on, the failure rate increased, because I think guys who are not practicing or good shooters or marginal shooters waited towards the end of the year to do that qualification. When we looked at the qualification sessions that happened at the beginning of the year, very few failures. You know, those were the practice shooters, the good shooters got up, got it done. I monitored a couple of firearms courses, and it really does come down to individual constables going out and practicing, knowing how to manipulate the weapon too. I mean, it's just not, when you watch somebody through a course of fire, and this is not being accurate, but knowing how to operate your weapon, how to manipulate, do a magazine exchange, clear a malfunction, the fundamentals, you know, grip, sight alignment, sight picture, trigger squeeze. All those things that we've been teaching for 23, 24 years. So
And we did have some individuals who did fail earlier in the year and were trying to get into like the last couple classes of the year. Unfortunately, it was, you failed the weekend before our last class. It's hard for staff to get a payment from you and get you enrolled into another class. We did have a total of 58 firearms classes that were offered last year, with a total of 1,060 seats that were available during the year. We had to cancel 5 of those classes, and we still had almost 200 seats that were not filled during classes that we did hold. So we make every effort to try to project and get enough availability for everyone across the state. And if it comes down that you're taking a class that's the second to the last class of the year and you fail, and then you can't get in that last class, there's not a lot that we can do. So we are encouraging everybody to try to get into an early annual firearms qualification class, so that if you do have a failure, then you will have ample opportunities to get into another class before the end of the year.
Question.
Yes.
Have we looked at, have we taken a historical look at the firearms failure rate because this seems like, well, no, I don't know, it's a hot topic, but I've heard this from a lot of folks of the number of failures this year. How does it compare, if we know, to say 5 years ago, 10 years ago?
Well,
for
historic, going back to about 2010, historically it was about 3%, maybe, it fluctuated a little.
So it has risen.
Right. Yeah. But what I would say to you too, and watching those where we did 20 hours of training, those instructors worked with those guys for a day and a half before they shot that qualification.
Right.
And you would see people, from the first drill who at the 25 aren't even hitting the backer, who they qualify. And I think that's the difference. They don't have that day and a half of refresher training on the fundamentals and those kinds of things. And so this is really now up to the individual. We did have one individual, he shot, I think, Wayne, it was a 13 or 12.
Yeah.
He got 12 points out of 30 at the 15 and 25. He failed earlier in the year. He was in that last qual course that I monitored, and I think he got in the 90s percentage. He ended up, and 25 and 15, it was very clear he went out and practiced and trained, because he didn't have any issues at the 25 and 15. He did excellent. So there, again, it's a personal perishable skill. Instructors can only do so much. It's up to that individual to practice and train and achieve that standard. So,
any other comments from the board on fire failure rate? Okay. Moving on, I guess we go into status of certifications and sets update. I'm sorry.
Yeah, this is just our normal update. As of October 16th of this year, we had 1,125 constables that were currently listed as active and certified. Of those, we had 900 or 80% were also certified to carry a firearm and the performance of their duties. Since the inception of the program in '96, there have been a total, we have trained or they have taken a waiver test, a total of 4,609 individuals since 1996. And a little bit of a SETS update, we are trying to increase the numbers of our SETS users, and again, you must be a SETS user in order to be able to access the online component for next year. Right now, we have a total of 1,097 active certified constables and deputy constables who are also SETS users, which is about 97% of our population. That 170 that I discussed earlier with Constable Bruno, those are the individuals that are not currently SETS users or do not have a valid email address on file with us. So we're trying to get them into the system, get them to become SETS users so that they can access the online module for next year. Any questions on any of these updates?
Questions from the board? Okay, moving on. I believe at this point in time, we need to retire to executive session. So I would ask that for taking, I need a motion. Move to
Executive session.
Second that, please.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Ayes have it. We're going to move to executive session, so please.
We'll give you about 5 minutes.
We'll let you know. Well, everybody, Antoine is appearing.
I was waiting for that.
Tonight and tomorrow night at the Harrisburg Civic Center. Tickets are going fast, so.
Yeah.
Oh, hell, that's all good to me, bro. I'm flying by the seat of mine.
He was an old attorney, about 90 years old. We're back up.
But I'm sure he knew his stuff though.
I was like a 25-year-old student, I was in smart mouth. You know, so you get like voice they're talking to.
I mean, I first had
Okay, there has been a motion that we move back into regular session.
Second.
All opposed, all opposed, nay, okay. Okay, gentlemen, the reason, and ladies, we moved to executive session, was to consider, a request, by Constable John Johnson, in Delaware County, to have, one of his modules, waived, which he attended back in August of 2019, and that was due to a prior officer-involved shooting. With that, we discussed it. That we are going to now vote on what we discussed.
I'll make the motion to grant the waiver.
Second.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Ayes have it. Waiver is approved. Okie dokie. Public voice, that's y'all out here. Hello.
Please
Public
just state your
voice.
name when you
Yes,
stand up.
please state your name and, constable, where he's from, and, okay, sir.
I'll go first. Constable Hollowell, I'm from Adams County.
There you go.
Represent the CCA, Commonwealth Constable Association. I have a couple questions. The first one, I was wondering if there's been any kind of insight or research as to how much savings we're looking at for causing new constables. I understand it's been approved, correct? New constables pay for their own training?
It's basically gonna make that basic training, cost neutral. It's really not gonna put any extra money in the fund, it's just
No, I understand.
covers the cost of, if we run a basic training and, everybody pays, that's how the dollar was figured, what to charge. It basically makes that training cost neutral to the program.
But it has to help in some way, because when we had the work group meetings, we talked about the most expensive things that it costs, and one of the most expensive single line items was basic firearms and ammunition and stuff, and we're not going to be required to pay that out of our fund anymore. Is that correct?
Right, I mean, we're basically, and that's how the dollar amount that we figured out how to charge is what, and of course, we're gonna have minimums, as we always do. If we don't get enough people to run that course where it would be cost neutral, we're not gonna run it.
Okay. But that has been approved, right?
Correct.
Yes, that was
All
approved
the
last
by
week,
the
August
board and the
30th,
commission,
yeah.
yes.
Okay, wonderful. Is there any way, we discussed in the work groups at one point in time, requiring newly elected constables who want to go through basic training and stuff like that to take some sort of a prerequisite course that basically states, before you do this, you should understand it's going to cost you this, this is what to expect becoming a new constable. Now that they're required to pay their own way, and we do have this Canvas system available, is there any way to just simply put in some sort of quick presentation for new constables that say, before you sign up and spend money to go through basic training, this is what you should expect?
Yeah, that won't happen in 2020. 2021, that is on the slot, that and moving the firearms testing, safety education and testing online in 2021.
Okay. At least it's coming, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yes.
This last one, this last question I have, I bring up for constables as a whole because I've heard people talk about this and I've had people come to me, and so I'm going to be straightforward with for everybody here on the record, I don't even agree with what I'm asking you, but I'm gonna ask you because I've been asked to ask the question. Why is it that if a constable, when I certify this year for firearms, or any certification, why is it that I'm even though my certification is good through the end of the year, why has it been the board's decision to suspend their firearm certifications immediately, even though they're still qualified throughout that rest of that year?
Because they demonstrated right away that they no longer have the ability to properly operate the firearm. Now, they may have had the ability 5 months ago or 10 months ago, but something now has shown us from a liability perspective, you demonstrated it right then and there that you no longer have it.
I agree. No said. I was just asking the question so I could say that I asked the question. So,
Anybody else on that?
That's all I have.
No, that's right on the money.
Thank you very much.
Sir, please stand, state your name.
Brian Webster, Perry County, constable, and also with CCA. I have a couple comments. Number one, this is my personal opinion, but it's 2020. I'm totally in favor of the online stuff. I do through PA train, I do EMS training and EMA training. MOPEX moved a lot of their training online. I'm totally in favor of it. I'm also in favor of the show and shoot. So that being said, I've done some research as far as the way MOPEC does their firearm certification and everything else. That's in line with what we do as far as gun and dough. The question I have, there's a lot of people, the rumbling's been out there about the second guns for 2020. Has there been any thought that CETB would allow, if they would come up with the paperwork, that they would allow a PCCD instructor or a MOPEC instructor with the proper paperwork to certify somebody outside with the second gun and submit it through CCE or through SETS or anything like that?
I mean, that exact approach we have not.
It wouldn't cost, therefore it would be revenue neutral for PCCD. It would be the constable's expense, but they could still do a second gun. I know, me personally, what I had done is when I had bought a new gun, I qualified second gun with my old gun. In the event of an OIS or anything like that, we had a guy who lost his gun for 1.5 years till the case moved through the system. He had a second gun. Once he was cleared to go back to work, he could keep working and stuff like that. But without that second gun, we got to jump through hoops of trying to get requalified, stuff like that.
I mean, it's something we can look at, that approach. I mean, we have not, and I'll be honest with you, and this doesn't make it less important, but this getting the online training up and the changes we made through this year is taking up a lot of the staff's time.
I get it.
And so we can take that and look at it.
I know there's a lot of us have contact with PCCD certified firearms instructors. MOPEC instructors are along the same line. They're at least using an NRA Leo course, something like that. And if it's at a cost that we would shoulder ourselves,
sure,
and then just be able to submit paperwork through SETS or something, that would.
I mean, that's something the staff can, work on and bring to the board. How would you do that? What's the mechanics of that?
Would greatly appreciate a look at that.
And it was also brought up for work group meetings about having just a PCCD sponsored second weapon qualification as well. Yeah. Because the avenue that you're referring to, that would be something, an outside entity that the board would have to say, this is a sponsored training and we're going to approve this sponsored training.
I'm just saying, use a instructor that you've already approved or MOPEC has approved. I mean, that would be a language change, I'm sure.
Well, actually, what we were...
And then just submit your paperwork that means it was done the way you wanted it done.
What we had talked about for 2021 is, if we run 40 annual quals, we tack on another 10 or 15 around the state that are second weapon, and you show up and you may pay something or whatever, but that way we could have 10 guys knock out a second weapon at once or whatever.
Right, I know.
And the board knows the standard is met. And,
right, yeah, I know. For 19, I had done a second weapon. I actually think I was in class with Mr. Bruno, and I had done a second weapon, and we were still done well before a 4-hour clip.
Right, and so right. Well, we'll elevate the issue of a second weapon.
Yeah, the Second Amendment is extremely important. Something we're definitely going to look at, make priority.
Second Amendment's.
And the Second Amendment's pretty cool, too.
I agree with you.
Yeah, we agree with you. Don't worry about that.
The Second Amendment is damn important. It should be the First Amendment.
It's confusing
The
because
second
it's
you
the
don't
NRA.
see my head. Jesus.
Sorry.
All right, moving on.
Me?
Anybody?
I'll throw you, brother.
Okay. Antoine Malloy, Allegheny County, constable for 25 years, second vice president for Allegheny County Constable Association, member of CCA, and also a member of PFOC. I have a couple questions for the board. First, I appreciate, Sherry, you giving the numbers on the failure rates for firearms. I'm a little concerned to hear that we had so many on the western side. Several members have expressed to me that it seems like there was a concerted effort for a number of constables to fail. So I'm not accusing anybody of anything, but one of the suggestions that I have, or maybe one of the things we should look at, is starting from the closer range and working back, as opposed to, in the firearms class I didn't have a problem with it, but we came right in and started from the 25. So I understand that we don't get any practice or anything at that qualification, but in a way, if you started closer, which they did at a lot of ranges, they didn't at the one at the class that I was in, and in several classes. Some of them they started closer, others they started from the further distance and worked their way in. So I just think it should be uniform across the board. If you're going to do it one way, it should be one way, because I think the guys who get to start closer and work their way back have a distinct advantage over the guys who have to start from the back and work their way forward.
And I agree with you. Consistency staff is talking about it. We're going to be talking with the schools about that. But one thing I will say, my observations of qualifications this year is, bottom line. Well, first of all, the West had the last class of the year, and I was there, and there were 16 guys in that class, and probably only about 5 of them were what I would call from the Western region.
Okay.
Most of those guys were from around the state, so there was only 6 people in that class passed.
Yeah.
12 of them were prior failures throughout the year. So these were the guys, their last attempt, to qualify. So, and honestly, my one criticism of the instructors that day, they were too lenient on the time. So even those gentlemen who failed, in my eyes, the instructors were a little lenient on the time. So I would say, from my observation, those guys had every chance to qualify.
Okay.
So I'll say two. So the best is not in the West, as a lot of people may think. But to me, it doesn't matter. I don't.
You just said they all came from the East.
I don't care if it starts at the 15-yard line or the 25-yard line. You know what I mean? You can make an argument on consistency. But you should be proficient to the point where everything starts you're going to complete the course of fire.
And Anton, we at the Deputy Sheriff's Academy, we start at the 25 and move forward. They almost identical course of fire. Two stages, 2 phases. And honestly, in fact, at this class, that last class, a gentleman came up to me and made the argument we should qualify, and I've heard this for years, at anything beyond the 10. Because people cite, it was FBI data, 3 to 5 seconds, 3 to 5 rounds, 3 to 5 feet, law enforcement gunfights. Of the 7 constable involved shootings, 5 of them have been at 15 yards or further. So, again, I agree with Constable Bruno. My observation were guys were struggling to qualify because they didn't have the basics down, those fundamentals. Guys aren't coming out of the holster with a good grip. They don't know how to manipulate their weapon. I mean, that really is I think, where people could gain. And I know associations have done, free firearms training. A guy pays $10 for the day, and they're trying to pick up the slack on training. And I would encourage associations to kind of continue that. So
it's your craft, hone it.
Listen, I'm just saying though, and I'm personally, I would love to start closer because from 25, I don't have an issue with it, and I'm just saying, for me, if you started me from the 3 and worked all the way back to the 25, I'm going to be much more comfortable by the time I get back there than when I come in the door cold and start from the 25 and work my way forward. I'm just saying, I mean, I can hit the target or do whatever I need to score and pass, but I'm telling you, from a comfort level, it makes me feel, some kind of way to know that another guy got to start up close.
Well, I'll be honest with you, when that gun comes out of the holster on the street, your comfort level is going to go, way out.
I'm talking about for the test stuff.
Oh, I understand, but, part of the thing we've heard for years is that, constables need to be proficient with the weapon, and part of that, whether we acknowledge it or not, stress. That's a big, you see that at the Deputy Sheriff Academy, they get 10 days of firearms training, and there are deputies who do great, and as soon as they come to qual and you put that clock on them, they can't qualify. So
it just,
Antoine, the ultimate test is when all hell breaks loose.
Absolutely.
Out there.
Absolutely. And I've seen guys freeze when.
Yeah. So when
the
that,
vet
it
who
doesn't
would sit
matter
on the
where
bench.
you're at 20. And I hear what you're saying, but I would want the constable to, that makes him then take the onus and say, listen, when I practice, I better start practicing from the 25 in as well as the 3 yard out, because I don't know what's going to get thrown at me. And this is where we want to be. We want to take them to, that ability to be that proficient with the firearm.
Okay. Thank you for your response on that. I have a couple other questions, and I will be brief. As far as certifications for new constables, firearms wise, and also basic training, my question is, why are there no training classes in the western part of the state? Why are they all for new constables here in the middle of the state? When to me, we could have had. I understand there would be 3 classes. You could have had one in the east, one in the middle, and one in the west, as opposed to all of them being here. You know what I mean? And I take into consideration that costs are involved. I get that, but if those classes are held at one of the state-run colleges, I understand those costs will be minimal.
Well, one of them is the facility we use for the basic training we get for free. So for 4 weekends, that cost is eliminated. And we have tried over the years running basic trainings, one in each region, moving it to west, and ultimately someone always is going to have to travel. And honestly, I'll be curious to see if we even run a basic training next year now that we're charging. I'll be curious to see. I know IUP's already been getting calls, and when Mike Marcantino says, hey, you're going to have to pay for the basic training, people aren't interested.
I'm saying, I have a deputy who's brand new coming in. He's going to have to fork out the $2,500 he's already prepared to do. But on top of that, now he's got to pay the travel expense, the lodging, his food and meals for all those weekends on top of not being able to work while he's here. I think, we're maybe we could have.
business.
Yeah, in 2020, that's where we're at.
No, I got it, but I think there could have been a little bit more thought put into that process about what everybody's going to do and how can we make it a little bit more easier, considering the fact that they do have a large expenditure of money to put out to get started.
So noted.
Well, and I can say too, Antoine, when we had talked with the work group meetings, that was one of the things that we had discussed there too, was having a centralized training facility for all the training. So we just took upon that model and said, okay, we're just going to do the basic training in the central part of the region.
Okay. All right. One more concern, because I'm bringing everybody's thoughts here from our association in that area. As far as the second gun thing, I want to piggyback on what Mr. Campbell? Mr. Webster said, Constable Webster said. Our thought process in Allegheny County was if this board could see some way for us to pay for a second gun, where if a constable elected to qualify with a second gun that he just came to certification class prepared to pay, maybe in the afternoon session he did his first gun in the morning session and paid to do the second gun in the second session. That's pretty much it for me.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
I'm good.
Ma'am? Sir? Sir?
Jack Garner, non-constable, Dauphin County. On page 7, I'm concerned about a statement that Mr. Fowl made about sworn law enforcement, not security. The question I guess I have is if a state trooper or somebody else, well, it's just a statement. that
Page
was
7
made.
of the board meeting minutes.
The thing that was out here in the front for everybody to get.
Full paragraph.
I guess the third paragraph. It's the last line. My question really doesn't have to do with that, but take the time to read that.
Go ahead, state your question.
Okay, the question is, when a police officer, state trooper, or whoever calls in here to PCCD as the training institute and certifier, and they ask, is a constable a sworn law enforcement officer? What do you tell
Well, this was in regards to the Safe Schools Act. That's what was being discussed at the time.
Yes, I understand that. Question is, what do you tell a police officer or state trooper that calls in here and asks, is a constable a sworn law enforcement officer? Because this was a huge problem in Philadelphia for a constable.
We refer them to case law. That's up for them to determine.
So you say, we can't tell you whether a constable is a sworn law enforcement officer or not. Here's a case law, you decide.
We can tell them this is what's in the training, and here's the case law that we use in the training that addresses issues, and it's up to you to determine.
So you don't give them a yes or no, you say, here is the information.
Correct.
My personal response would be that they are an elected official.
As to whether or not
But some aren't, some are appointed.
But Jack,
Yeah.
knowing where you're coming from and having those questions posed to me as a board member, and I've had state troopers and I've had other folks ask me, and I've said it revolves back to the same discussion I had with John Fallon board back in 2000 when I first came on the board. We still do not have a clear definition of what a constable is.
Thank
The
you.
General Assembly is going to have to do that. We need that definition, because the struggles that the board has had over the years for training is what is appropriate for a constable and what's not. Some of the subjects that have been ditched because there hasn't, and one of them is tasing, because there has not been a clear definition, and we have district attorneys across the state that disagree on whether or not a constable can even be certified to carry a taser, depending what county you're in. We got to get away from this county thing. We got to look at this stuff at the state level. Because the training we're providing from the state level, we need that definition from the General Assembly.
But it could come through a general counsel opinion and a policy statement from the agency, as many other state agencies have policy statements.
In Title 18, if you assault a constable under Title 18, under that section of the Crimes Code, it's considered an assault on a law enforcement officer for that specific offense. Other places, the courts have said it's not, they're not a law enforcement. And so there's no consistency in statute, in case law, etc. And as Constable Westover said, and I have said it for many, many years, the number one thing constables could do to improve their situation is to have a legal definition of what a constable is in Pennsylvania. And whatever that definition is, then that helps decide what this board trains you on, etc. Because training is derived from statute and case law. You know, authority is derived from statute and case law, not from training. So it's established in statute and case law. Based on that, we conduct the training on what's appropriate.
And it's mind-numbing that we're this far deep into it. We still do not have that definition.
And to be clear, the legal office here at this agency is not the general. I'm chief counsel to the agency. The general counsel is my boss. And if there would be an opinion, it would come from the general counsel at the direction of the governor. Way above my pay grade.
I'm sorry, real quick, not piggybacking that at all, but wasn't there just case law that we're putting into, from what I understand, we're putting into training next year, something like that about constables, specifically out of Adams County, that went further to describe this, what we're talking about right now?
That was the DUI.
Right.
Right. It was, and the case was constables were at a house serving whatever papers, and a guy came flying off the road and went between the two houses. He was drunk.
Yes.
They detained him. The constable called the ADA or the state police. State police couldn't respond for like an hour.
Mhm.
He called the ADA on call, and the ADA said detain him. And
Yes.
that's the basic of the case. And the court said their detention was legal because it was at the direction of the ADA they spoke to.
Okay.
And because then state police showed up and did the field sobriety and arrested the guy for DUI or whatever. But it was about the detention. Could they hold them until state police could come and effectuate the arrest?
And the courts have been, particularly the appellate courts have been, they've not wavered for years in stating that constables have the same authority in breach of peace offenses as common citizens. And they've interpreted those types of situations, they're not felonies, they're breaches of the peace because they affect the good order of the community. And they've been pretty consistent in generating that type of opinion. I've never seen it reversed, have you? Not since I've been involved.
Sir?
If I could just add one more thing on to, I don't know about all the other constables in here, but I was sworn in at my county office after the election. So if you ask me, am I a sworn law enforcement officer, I will unequivocally stand there and say yes. I don't know about what happens in any other counties when after guys are elected or appointed, but we're required in Allegheny to come down and be sworn in. You have to read a statement.
But Antoine, as are all elected and appointed officials, they have to take the oath of office. It's the same. It's not a different oath for.
Right.
Yeah, but doesn't it say our oath says something about upholding the law?
Yeah.
Right, we're officers of the court.
Says the
We're
same
an
thing
arm
with
and
everybody,
extension
though.
of the court, arm of the court. That's what we are, very, very specific.
So the oath of a mayor doesn't say uphold the law, right?
Uphold the laws of the
Yeah.
United States of America and
okay.
the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
Well, then he's along.
There's a lot of things that we need to do. We need to define going down, and one of them too is what we're gonna look at as far as second gun next year would be the subject to of LEOSA, which seems to be a very, gray area, muddy area for constables. Some interpret it that, we do fall under that.
Wait, the board's gonna look into that?
No, we're just gonna maybe, try to clear it up, you know what I mean?
But we just said that the board isn't an agency that makes decisions. based
Right,
on-
but I mean, we do educate,
Okay.
so try to educate you.
And by
on that
what John
thing.
means
Because what
is-
we're doing is we're seeing a lot of constables walking around with little badges on that they've made up themselves. It says Leo's.
Okay, but
Yeah.
we
Now,
were
where's
asking
the,
questions
where's
earlier
the
if the board-
agency that's backing that? If they read Leosa, you need to have an agency that's backing that.
Well, one of the
Okay,
things,
but what I'm
Dan,
saying though is if you guys are gonna make up, by say you guys, you mean the board, if the board's gonna make a public decision based upon that, why can't you make a public decision based upon whether or not we're
not a
sworn
public
law
decision,
enforcement
it's
officers?
education. We've had this throughout the course of the program, training. I'll pick PFAs and domestic violence. A lot of constables like, I don't do that. Some of the guys in the more rural counties, because it's them and a trooper and the sheriff, and so they would serve the emergency PFA or whatever. But the other thing too, that the way that course was designed was to educate you, because you in your county may not do the emergency PFAs or whatever, but you're knocking on a lot of doors. You have to have an awareness of domestic violence and because if you come across something, you have to be a good witness and understand what you're seeing. And hey, do I need to call somebody else? And so I think John, what he's talking about is more trying to give you guys the information to understand the issue. It doesn't mean
I couldn't agree more, but we got to be really careful. Not when I say we, I mean I would think the board has to be really careful on what they say, because even if you're not creating statute or if you're not creating policy, you know as well as I do, when it comes down to a constable ever getting in trouble and having to go before a court, one of the first things they're going to do is pull training that was put to us, and they're going to use that in case law.
No.
And so if PCCD comes out with education for constables about this, that can be used in court at some point in time.
Guidance.
And even
maybe it's guidance, but if I'm being hemmed up in Maryland because I had a firearm down there, the first thing Maryland EDA is going to do or the Maryland District Attorney's gonna do is gonna contact PCC and say, what have you trained that constable at?
You're going to Maryland with fire.
I'm not saying I am.
Right,
It was
they don't
right now, brother.
They don't recognize it.
That's not, that's
Or New
neither here nor
Jersey.
there. I'm simply saying, what I'm saying is, I think it's almost hypocritical to say on one level, one side,
That's not what we're
that
saying.
we're not willing to.
Andy, that's not what we're
That's
saying.
not
What
what
we're
we're
saying is,
You're
that's
getting
all
in
on
the
what
weeds
John
here,
said. The training would involve, and we're not gonna pigeonhole ourselves or you.
Right.
This is the current, everything we know about this issue.
And a lot of times it's presented
This
to
guy,
you to make a
this
decision.
U.S. attorney says they're not. Somebody over in Hawaii says they are. So it's education.
And when
It's
you
not
start-
an endorsement of
when you start
you
seeing
guys
some-
are
Right.
covered under this.
And you are right, it is how the material's presented, because part of our mission to educate is to give, because a lot of guys, and you know who I'm talking about, a lot of constables live on rumor as to what, what's right, what's not.
Well, I'm the first one to say it. I would love to see black and white. I would love
Right,
to see
right.
it, and then we know what to follow.
We'd love to give it to you in black and white.
Right, but that's the problem. So,
A lot of gray areas.
but, yeah.
The only way I can see us out of this, because we have really tried harder the last couple of years to get traction with the General Assembly to make some needed changes, whether it's a surcharge or a definition of constable, whatever. The 900 or 1,000 constables that are active in this state, they really need to bury the axe and say, we are competitors, but we're on the Titanic, and the Titanic is going down. So we better start working together to patch the hole. The 900 or 1,000 constables should be going down to the Capitol building like they did to start this training clear back in the 90s, and be on the steps down there protesting and getting media attention. And if it doesn't work this month, we go back down next month and do it again until the General Assembly folks get tired of having us out on the steps complaining. That's really the only thing that I see that might get us traction, because up to now, we've been bouncing off this wall, trying to get somebody down there to get a bill in the judiciary and actually get it voted back out of judiciary and get an up or down vote.
And perhaps everybody out there should go make an appointment to see their legislator, in Allegheny County, in Adams County. I know Adams County.
Oh, I have, trust me.
I know, Adams County Constable and Commonwealth Constable Association does a tremendous job in many, many things. In training and, they do a lot of due diligence regarding this, but, as Constable Westover says, it's a squeaky wheel that gets the grease.
And that's probably what's gonna take, because that's what it took back in the 90s to get this training started. To begin with, it took a rally. It took the constables of the state burying the axe for that afternoon, going down there and doing that. And like I said, it may be a harder fight. It may be something we have to do over a number of months before we rally down there. And I know it's a cost, and travel and everything else that's going on. But if nothing else is working for us, and like the General said, we drop below that magic number, and we no longer can spend money, and everybody's certification runs out the end of the year, we all were on the Titanic and we all went down. So what do we do to try to stop that? The associations have got to get their folks, educated that we need to do this. We need to rally down there. Take a little bit of your time out of your life and get out. If you really care about this profession, you need to do this. Because, the fixes themselves are not that difficult. The little technical things that we need in the legislation to fix our authority and be identified as what a constable is, and the surcharge fix, and the fix that you go to training, you get certified, that you'll have your constable position, but you get elected just because you run around with a gun and a badge. And that's the biggest criticism I've heard from the commission, and our solicitor was there. Their concern was, well, what did the judge say? 3 drunken folks can write you in and you are a constable. Well, the fact of the matter is, that needs to be fixed. If our legislation mirrored the DJ's, where you have so long to get certified after you get.
Who said that?
Oh, one of our commission guys.
I thought it was 10 drunken voters.
I agree with you, Craig. And
It's
we've actually,
unfortunate that anybody like
and I'll
that
come out and
should
say
be on
that
board.
we at the
Yeah, make a
CCA have been
comment like
trying
that.
for years and years and years and years, as you guys know, to push this forward. But we've just hit some roadblocks. And I don't know what this is.
Yeah. All right, moving on here. Commissioner Rudolph, could you please stand? Thanks, sir.
You're saying.
I want to thank you. This probably would be your last meeting, am I
Yes, it
correct?
will be. Yeah, I've been doing this for actually longer than I anticipated. It was supposed to be a 1-year tour. I've been here for 7 years on board, so yeah, it was sort of a melancholy trip down here last night to get ready for the meeting today. But because I have so much in my background that has, from my military background of 37 years, in a way, we're all together. We're all fighting for the same reasons to make this thing work. And I am really concerned, and as I have been from the very beginning, on the financial situation for constables. And we have reached the point we've got to do something drastic, and I'm not sure what it is. I think we need some help from the state assembly to have them recognize this is something that's not going to go away. As a county commissioner, I know what the costs are if we don't have constables. The sheriff's department would love to take over that ownership, let me tell you the truth. And that is a very costly venture for county commissioners. So, you know, right now, there was some question at one time whether you were employees of the state, but what you are is you're a contract employee of the counties. That's exactly how it works. And so that leads to the financing side. And I appreciate the associations that you have in working on your behalf. You need to have that. I think Greg said it very well. When we as county commissioners have an issue, we take it to the steps. And we try to gather as much support as we can from our home base. But it's harder for you than it is for us, because you have to work harder to get that home base established for your constable friends. So, anyway, I want to thank you. Thank for all the leadership that's here. The staff has done a tremendous job in moving this thing forward. You got to be proud of all the work that's been done here, and I hope you have a great journey from now on out. And God bless you all. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe we can hire you as a lobbyist. Anything for the good of the order, the board?
I think I can speak for my other fellow board members in saying how much we've appreciated his guidance.
Very much.
His guidance here. When I first came on board, I don't want to say it was a brother of the ship, but he was certainly someone that I looked to as the, I know you're a general, but in that case, you use a nautical term, so you were the admiral, and you kept the thing going the way it was supposed to be going. I can just say that I sincerely have appreciated and enjoyed serving on this board with you. I'm going to miss you.
Thanks, Judge.
Yep.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, if there's not anything further, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make your feet is what I said.
I'll make that motion. I have a second.
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned until.
Will you go plan for retirement
February 13th.
February 13th.
Well, what time is that first show?
Well,